and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. I'm going to review a little bit of what I did last segment because I'm working with timing and how you count notes, and I realize that this can be confusing to a lot of people. And it's a lot of people that don't quite get it, and they want to get it, and they need to be explained in a way that they can understand. And we ended up by playing this song, which I'm going to do again, but first of all, I want to review this. When you have a key signature, like this key signature is 3/4, and here's I'm sorry, not the key signature, this is the time signature, that's what I'm dealing with. Let me move this over so it'll be a little more clear. I'm a little out of camera range. Here we go. This is the time signature right here. This is the key signature right here. The time signature says this song is 3/4. What does it mean? It means it has 3 beats to a measure, and that a quarter note gets 1 beat. Now, as my director pointed out to me, and I didn't think of it at the time, but I'm glad he did, what if I wanted to write this all in eighth notes? A quarter is worth 2/8. So I could have had 2/8 here, 3/8 right here, because this is a dotted quarter, and another eighth right here. So it would be 1 and 2 and 3 and, you know, I could have done the whole thing in eighth notes. Now I didn't because people don't. It's much easier if you write it the way that I wrote it. But if you take a look right here, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and, but you know, if I had just taken 1 and 2 and 3 and stopped it right here, and forgotten about this, stopped it right here, it would be like writing this all in eighth notes. 2/8 here, 3/8 here, and another eighth note right there, because this quarter note is worth 2/8, because if you split a quarter up, you get 2/8, and this is worth 3/8, because here's a quarter, it's worth 2/8, and then you put a dot beside it, and the dot gives the note 1/2 of its worth, more than what as it's written. So it's written as a quarter, which is equivalent to 2/8, and this dot gives it another eighth. So when you count it, 1, 2, 3 and, or if I'd written the whole thing in eighth notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and you'd skip this. So I don't want to make it complicated, but every note is like that. 1, 2, 3 and. That and is that last eighth note that was not included in this dotted quarter. And then this half note, which is dotted, the half note gets 2 beats anyway, that's usually what it is, and then that dot gives it 1 more beat. Why? Because it makes that note 1/2 worth 1/2 more than it would be as it was written. So half of 2 is 1, so you add it with that note, that gives you 3 beats. Because we're dealing with whole notes here, which is right here, the whole note is worth 3 beats in this music. Why? Because the measure is worth 3 beats, and a whole note is worth whatever the time signature says it is. And so, although I know it can be confusing, what I want to start teaching you is how to read the music. It's not that hard to do it when you get used to it. But if you're not a mathematician, and I am not, it takes some getting used to. But in order to play music, you not only have to know how to play the instrument, how to tune it, how to recognize what the notes are, how to play the notes, but it's also important that you know how long you keep each note and how is it related to other notes that are also on the page that you're playing, because notes are kind of relational. They relate to each other. And one of the reasons I use a keyboard so much is to show you how notes relate to each other. So I'm going to take this down now, and we're going to play this one more time. And as I'm going to show you how to count it, I did it last segment, but I want you to get the most of it as you can. And I wrote it for the purpose of your understanding what a dotted quarter is and an eighth note, because this is oftentimes seen together, dotted quarter and eighth. Dotted quarter and eighth, and I have that off and on right here, dotted quarter and eighth. I have that on the music quite a bit for this piece, and I wrote it for that purpose. And of course, when you play it, you get a lot like that. So as you're counting it, and I'll count it with you first before we start, 1, 2, 3, and what I'm doing is saying 1, and this quarter would be 2, and then this is the beginning of this quarter. We split that in 2/8, and this represents that eighth. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. And then these quarters, of course, are all one beat. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and. You see, it's the same thing, that dotted quarter and eighth, and this is worth 3 beats. And for the most part, after that, I have quarter notes. Each quarter note is worth 1 beat. How would I know that? Because that 4 on the bottom of the time signature indicates that the quarter note gets 1 beat. Now, how would I know that? Because when I showed you on the last segment the circle, and I can split it 4 ways, 4 quarters each is equal to the whole. So we're taking the whole and we're splitting it, but we're only using 3. 1, 2, 3, and. So this is 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and this is 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3, these two together. This is 1, 2, 3, and then I finish it off with quarter notes. 1, 2, 3, and then the whole note is a whole note worth 3 beats, because the time signature says that there's 3 beats to a measure. So anytime I have a whole note, I've got one here, I've got one here, I've got one here, I've got one here and here, they're all worth 3 beats. So I hope this is kind of making sense to you. I'm going to play this piece once again before I go on to any other kind of music. And if you listen to it and try as you watch this, see if you can figure out how I'm timing it to play it and how you can count the time to it. It's not a hard piece to play. If you understand how the notes are put together and you understand the dotted quarter and eighth concept, which I have all over the place because that's what I wrote the music for, then you can understand. Like when you get down here, 1, 2, 3, and you start to count the 3 because you've got half of it right here, and then the and kind of finishes it up. So let me play this once again. I'm not playing it fast. It's not meant to be played fast. So here we go. Count the music as best as you can. Now, another thing that I want to point out to you about this music, there's an F sharp here that puts it in the key of G. So anytime you have a sharp, anytime you play that F, this F here, and there are a number of them, but this one here, this one here, whenever you get to an F, it doesn't matter whether it's a high F on this high line or whether it's a lower F down here. That's just as much of an F. It's an octave below this, but it's still an F. Anytime you find an F in this music, you put a sharp on it and you raise it 1/2 step. As I said before, it doesn't matter whether it's a high F, which would be this line here if it was a high F, or whether it's a low F, which is right down here on this first space. It doesn't matter what the octave is. If it's the F, it gets get sharp. Now, if I wanted to do it and I didn't want it sharp, but say I wanted one measure where the F was not sharp, then I would put a natural sign in front of it, and then you'd play it natural. That would be an accidental because I've changed something that was in the key signature. But I'm not doing it for that piece, but just to make you aware of that. Now, I want to, let's see, put up another piece because I've done a little bit the same thing with this one, except that I'm doing it with accidentals. So I don't know what will be easiest for you to see. They're about the same. I know the notes are small, but what have I done? I've done everything in eighth notes. B, B flat, B natural, B flat, B natural, D, C, B, which will be a natural because this is a natural, and it goes for the rest of the measure. Now, this will require some explanation, so what I want to do, I should have made it larger, I guess. I'm going to play the piece. Now, it's really like an exercise in an accidental because I'm taking the B, this is the B, and I'm going to flatten it, which means I'm going to put this third note down. Remember, when you flatten a note, it goes down by a half a step. If I did a whole step, it would end up by being an A. But I didn't want a whole A. I didn't want a whole step. I wanted a half a step. And that's this number, this here. Some people would put these two down. But this makes it flat. And then what I do is I put it back to being the B natural again, and then I put it down by flats. I'm going to play just this down to here. This measure, you can see how long it is because it's all eighth notes. The time is 4/4. That means that there are 4 beats to the measure. And so a quarter note gets 1 beat. That's what that second 4 means. And if you count it, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. The whole measure is made out of eighth notes. And since a quarter note, if you split it in half, it becomes an eighth note. You would count it 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. It doesn't have to be fast, but I don't have, it's a 4/4 time, but all of the notes are actually eighth notes. Now, when you get to this B flat, that's an accidental because it's not in the key signature. And so when I get it back to natural, that's also an accidental because I'm taking it and putting it back to what the original key signature is, and you know there's no B flat there. So I have to put the natural sign. And then I wanted it flat again, that's another accidental. I have to put the flat on it. And then I put it back to natural again, I put the natural sign on it, and that becomes the last accidental. Whatever the last accidental is, it goes for the entire measure. This may seem a little confusing, but let me play the song, and as you follow along, I think it's going to start to make some sense to you. Here again, it's not fast at all. Basically, I have all eighth notes plus an occasional half note. And I did it this way, I wrote it this way so you would understand a little bit as to how to count it. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4. That half note is 2 beats. So 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1 and it would be the equivalent of 1 beat because it's a quarter that's split into 2/8. This is a second beat because it's a quarter split into 2/8. And then you have that half note, which is 2 beats. So 1 and 2 and 3, 4. You've got your 4th beats in that measure, just like you have your 4 beats up here, but they're all written in 8th notes. And then what I did is I did the same thing again. A and that G sharp is an accidental because it's not in the key signature, so I have to put the sharp in front of it. And then I go back to the A. Now, is that the A an accidental? No, I never flattened it or sharpened it to begin with. So A, G. Here, I don't have to write. This is a G sharp, just like this is, because this goes for the entire measure, because an accidental will go for the entire measure. This G is automatically sharp, and I don't have to put another sign in front of it. So I'll play just this here, and you'll see I start off with an A, then I go to the G sharp, an A, G sharp, not an accidental by itself because it's already been made an accidental over here, and I'm not changing it back to natural again, so I'm leaving it as it is, and these notes are not affected at all. So let me play from here down to here. Okay. You see, this is not too hard. I play A, accidental on the G sharp, back to A, back to the G, which is sharp because this one isn't. It goes for the whole measure. And then up to the C, B, A. Then the A, G. This is natural again. This is not sharp. Why? Because we're in a new measure, and I don't want it sharp, so I leave it alone. If I wanted it sharp, I would have to add another sharp sign here, and it would go for the entire measure, and this G would also be sharp because it goes to the entire measure. But I don't have to worry about that because I'm not sharping it, so it's written, you play it as it's written. The sharp comes here. Now you can see that if you do this over and over and over again, it can be somewhat confusing if you don't understand it. So we start with the F sharp. Anytime we get to an F, we will sharp it. And I do have a few, but not a lot. I'm spotting one right here, but there's one right here. There's one right here. So there are various Fs that will be sharp because I've written it in the key signature. I don't have to mark them as sharp. They are not accidentals. They're in the key signature, so it's already set up for them to be sharp. And then the real confusing part will be in the B flat to the B natural to the B flat to the B natural. All of those are accidentals. The B flat, because I wanted it flat, that's not in the key signature, that's an accidental. To get it back to natural, that's an accidental because I have to change what would normally go for a full measure. And then this is another accidental because I'm flatting it again, and another accidental because I'm putting it back to natural. So all of those that are marked are all accidentals. Whenever you mark something so it's different than what the key signature is, then it's an accidental. To get it back again, it's also an accidental, unless you're going to keep what it is and do it for the whole measure, then you don't have to turn it back. I don't know if this makes much sense to you, but it is a part of music reading. When I get down here, it's 1 and 2 and. This G sharp is an accidental, and then I go from the A to the F sharp. That's going to be sharp because it's in the key signature, E and then D. Now, when you get to this D, there's a little curve over it with a dot. That's a hold. And when I play it, I'll get it down there and I'll hold that note. I have R-I-T, that means retard, so I'm going to slow it down. I get to that note D, and I'm going to hold that note. And then I have this a tempo written in. That means take it back to the original speed. So I'll go a little faster. I slowed it down here during the retard, and then I get it faster here to what it was to begin with. Bring it back to what it was. But the accidentals are the same also. B flat, B natural, B flat, B natural, D, C, B, and I go on from there. Down here, there's another hole. That curve with the dot in it is a hole. So I will hold that note longer. How much longer do I hold it? However long I want. I don't want to have it too long because it wouldn't make any sense in the music because the music is fairly fast. But I can hold it as long as I want to hold it. All I need to do is to have that symbol there, and I know to hold that note. And then I have a couple of little hash marks here. That means that I'm going to stop it for just a fraction of a second, and then I'm going to start this again. So if I'm going to play, let's see, let me play from this E to this, and then I'll show you how I'm doing that. So what I did, I held that, and then I started again. I took a tiny bit of a break, just a fraction of a break. Then I started up, normal speed, and finished the song, finishing with that half note. Now, when you write, you can write any way you want to write it. But I chose to do this because I want to show you the accidentals, how you play that B flat, how you get it back to the natural B again, and the timing and the speed and so forth. So once again, B to B flat, and back to B flat. And then I want a D. Those are just regular eighth notes. And then I continue on that second line. How do I play that G sharp? Here's a G sharp. It's an accidental. How do I play it? Well, here's the A, and there are different ways you can play it. The correct way, this will do it, but I can also half hold it. If I'm playing something in a hurry and I don't want to fiddle around with this, although this is accurate, I can put my left hand third finger down and half hold this note here. This is the G, and if I pull it so that I only have half of it covered, that's going to sharpen it. This is going to be more accurate in terms of pitch. So which one do I use? Well, the trick of music is knowing what the best fingering is for the note. And I've mentioned it before, but I'll mention it again. Saxophones have 5 ways of playing B flat. So which way do you play it? Well, there's one way that's hardly ever used. You knock it out to begin with. But there are 4 other ways. And what you choose for a fingering will depend upon the notes that come before it and the notes that come after it. So you play it the way that it's the easiest way to finger. Now, in this case where I was going fast, I just took my G sharp, my G finger, which is this one right here, and I just tapped it a little on this, and this automatically, that'll sharpen it. But I could have done this. This is B, A, G sharp. And if I want the G, just put this down. When I first start out students and we're playing our first scale, how do you finger it? B, A, G, F, E, D. Now, if it's a Baroque instrument, which this is, and which most of them are, because they're a little bit better in terms of pitch than the German ones, although frankly, I don't see much difference. But if it's Baroque, when I hit that F, I want it maybe pitched a little bit more accurately. Put this finger down, and that gives me just a slightly flatter. You can see if I play the F that you do in German fingering, and then, although it's an F for sure, if I put this finger down, skip this, and put the next one down, it makes it just a tiny bit flatter. Can you see the difference? There's really not a lot of difference, but there is a little difference. And, but there's not much to worry about. But I could do it. For a Baroque instrument, it's just natural. You just put these down, and then how do you know you have a Baroque instrument? Well, you're not going to be able to see it, I think, on television. It would take a real close-up. But here is your thumb hole, and right above it is a little tiny B. I mean, it's the same color as the instrument, it's raised a tiny bit. That B will tell me that it's a Baroque instrument. If it's not there, then it's a German-fingered instrument, it's not a Baroque. There's not much difference between them. The basic fingerings are a lot the same, except when you get to that F, you just take and skip the E. This would be an E. Skip this number and put that finger down, and it changes the pitch a little bit on that F, and that would be the correct way of playing the F. If I just put this down, what am I going to get? I'm going to get the E. And this is the D, and then if you cover those two little holes, then you get the C, the low C. So it's interesting. Oh, I only have 1 minute left, so I guess I'd better close it off. We'll be doing some more music that I've written to show you fingering and stuff like that you need to know in order to play music. We'll continue with this next time. Please join me then.